Hello everyone and welcome to my new video. And what is this video about? Well, 3 days ago, I went on my YouTube and I said, what should my next video be about? And this guy, Christian Pagar, I can't pronounce your last name, so I'm not going to try. He said, you could walk us through the Sunshine Flows into Trees project file. It is the best song I've ever heard ever in my life. So that is what I thought I would do. I did have some other very nice suggestions as well, including that I should do a video about World War II, but I'm not going to do that. Also, the same chap said, what about how to finish a track? This is a very interesting concept, something I've been asked quite a lot, and I'll explain why I've never done it. Here's another one here, like mixing, EQ, compression, blah, 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 and all this sort of stuff. Let's have a look, shall we? So yes, it's often been the case that throughout my time on YouTube, I've had people leaving comments saying, please, could you do a video about how to finish a song? Please, could you do a video about how to mix, EQ, compress a song? Please, could you do a video about how to write a song? I will admit that pretty much all of my videos are about how to get things started in a fun, flip, like not giving a shit and very fast kind of way. And so when people come up with suggestions like, can you make a video about how to finish a track? My answer tends to be no, because it's just too broad and too subjective for me to do a video about in 25 minutes. Perhaps it could be like a series or something. I don't know. I've been thinking about it for a long time and I don't really know how to tackle it. Plus, so many different approaches and techniques apply to different types of genres of music. And my genre of music is basically weird and experimental and far out and abstract and off the radar. Why have I decided to do that? Well, one, because I enjoy it. And two, because sometimes I feel like it's a safe place to make yourself immune to criticism. So what do I mean by that? Well, for example, if I was going to do a tutorial about how to make the next Foo Fighters album, or if I was going to make a tutorial about how to make a slamming big dance floor tune to splatter all over Call of Duty or something, those types of mainstream hits have now new levels of standard which need to be met in order for people to accept them. And I can't be fucked with any of that. If I was to do something like that and I got it wrong and I was out of my depth, then I'll get all kinds of dickheads coming on my comments going, oh, your snare sounds shit. You can't mix. Why are you doing a cut? Why are you doing a bit? Why are you doing that? Your snare sounds shit. Listen to my snare. And he's like dudes like unzipping their flies and flapping their snare drums onto the table. Look at my big snare, waving. There's just so many people just waving snare drums around. And going, ugh. And I don't want to wake up to that in the morning when I check my notifications, you know. So that's why I've never really done videos about things like that. Basically, because I'm scared. I'm scared of criticism. I'm scared of being called out for doing something wrong. However, I thought that I would kind of address some of the suggestions I was given and show you how I finished this particular track. And I also give some of you carte blanche to say that my snare sounds shit because I'm done with this now. I'm moving on to new things. I don't care. I don't really care what anyone has to say about this because everything that you could possibly think about this, I've already thought it and it's kept me awake at night and I've slaved over it for years. That's another important thing as well, is that if you're seriously invested in something that you're working on, you sometimes need to get to a point where you start to hate it and you're ready to let go of it. Because then when someone comes along and goes, your snare sounds shit, then you're like, I don't care. Don't care what you think. I'm doing something else now. I'm over it. Anyway, let's roll back the transport and have a listen to Sunshine Flows into Trees. This is the pre-mastered version, so this is just the mix. So I don't know what the levels are going to be like in terms of the overall master mix. you get the idea. So it's kind of a sort of ambient drum and bass thing, you know. And I played all the instruments. Well, I say I played all the instruments. I played the drums and, well, actually, I just played the drums. Everything else was kind of programmed. But anyway, this isn't the project file. The project file is long gone. I don't know where it is. I can't remember what I named it, because basically what I was doing was, as I was working through all of the tracks for the album, when I was satisfied that a certain part was either finished or sounded nice, I would print it and then I would delete the instrument and the MIDI or whatever that I was using to make it. Why was I doing that? Well, first of all, it was a good psychological process to kind of make me commit and move forward and not spending too much time tinkering and faffing about with stuff that was just stops the process. And also because I didn't want to do what I did with my last album, which was every time that I would load up a project, I was loading the entire project. So not just samples that I've recorded, but sample packs, all the plugins on all the tracks, you know, 50 tracks of stuff, MIDI, you know, and sometimes it was taking minutes for the project to load and for all the samples to buffer or whatever. And I was just like, I don't want to have to wait for that again. I just want to mix with just the audio. So even though these aren't, I've called the project stems, actually these are, I called them prints. And so not as in prints, but print. They are prints of the various parts. And I would do that in the session. I would create a new audio track and I would route the instrument or group of instruments that I wanted to print to a new audio track and just record it like in real time so I could sit and watch it. And I also did them all at very, very loud volume. Not really loud, but like, so here's the sub. And that is like just ever so slightly slamming at 0 dB, but there's a little bit of clipping there, but otherwise it's all okay. So everything is, it's kind of normalized, but I just prefer to say that it was just bounced like really loud. So we could look at this vocoder part here. We can zoom in. They're just really nice, big files, you know, really loud. And also when you look at the VU meters, the metering, they're all going to slam at roundabout where the needle is on the fader. And this might be a terrible idea, I don't know, but for me it just sort of made sense. And also it was a good kind of visual cue. I know that you've got to use your ears when you're mixing, okay? But sometimes we have these meters here that are showing us what's going on. Why don't we use them? So I thought, I want to make sure that wherever I put the needle, the fader, that is where that volume is actually going to be. So this track here that I'm on, which is the snare bottom, it's at -18. That means that it's peaking at -18. Anyway, we'll get to that in a bit. So after I'd printed all of the files or all the parts and I'd done all the arrangement and all the sound design, it was at that point that I decided I wanted to do the mix. So I printed them all inside the session and then I trashed all of the stuff that I used to make the prints so that I was left with just the prints, all the bounces, all the stems or whatever. They're all stereo files. And then I arranged them on the mixer, or in the session view in this case, from left to right according to their frequency, you know, residency. So the sub went on the far left and then I moved to the kick and then the drums, and then I moved into some stuff that's a little bit higher. So there's my mid-range bass, my guitars, and then into this vocoder part, and then the harmonics, which are very high up, and then the effects, which are very high up. So I've kind of gone from left to right, like on the spectrum, so that if I was ever uncertain about things, like things kind of crossing over, I could pull in the spectrum and kind of look at what was going on and think from left to right. Like, I mean, it seems a little bit weird to kind of reach for a fader that's on the far right-hand side when it's a bass. Just put it on the left, because that's kind of where the bass is on where you're looking on the spectrum. Anyway, so that was one thing that I did for all the tracks that I think is a pretty useful thing to do, and I've heard lots of people do it. So let's have a look at, where should we start? Let's start with, let's start with the rev guitar in. Hang on. If I mute, I have to double solo so we can still hear the mic. So let's have a listen here. So you can see it is just about to peak at -18. Yeah. So at its loudest point is where it is on the fader. So this part, I'll give you a little commentary now. So this is me on the guitar, but I actually, once I'd worked out what the chord progression was, I played the chord progression backwards so I could get that reverse guitar thing. So if we actually like took a bit of this and sort of snipped it and then reversed it, once it's done its thing, this was actually what I played. Sounds quite cool, actually, with the reverse reverb. Okay, yeah, so then I played that, then I did a little bit of editing, and then I reversed it to get the initial chord progression. So that's basically one of my guitars going into, I can't remember. It was either my Line 6 or it was maybe the amp in Ableton with a little bit of overdrive, probably a little bit of the channel EQ on the guitar before it went into the amp, just to make it a little bit brighter. Loads of like EQing and compression and stuff I did very, very quickly, mostly just high passing things that weren't, I didn't want to have any bass in, and just a little bit of boosting on the top, like nothing surgical at all. I kind of wanted to mix this like it was like the late 70s or something, just be like really quick. So I didn't faff about too much with any complex EQing. It's all kind of quite simple. So where could we go from there? Well, let's have a listen to the drums. Let's jump to where the drums are. So this was me on the drums, but I probably more likely played them at this speed. Yeah. And then I sped them up because I'm a cheat. Because I'm not very good on the drums and I wanted to sound really good. So I played them slow and sped them up. And this was, there were some problems with this because I wanted to, you know, I got my drum kit and I got my mics and I was like, I'm going to mic up the drum kit and I'm going to do a very nice recording and I'm going to mix this like a professional and I'm going to have all, you know, all of these options to choose from and I'm going to gate the snare properly, I'm going to gate the kick properly, I'm going to do all this stuff. And then when I did it, I was like, oh, this recording's awful. But at the same time, the take I was very, very happy with. In fact, I think I did it in the first take or the second take. And whilst there were a few little timing errors, which I nudged in places, I was perfectly happy with it. But I did use one overhead. What a dumbass. So I basically decided to create some stereo width by not gating the snares and instead panning the snares a little bit left and right. So let's just hear the top snare. That's the top snare, a little bit on the left-hand side, and here's the bottom snare. Oh, sorry. Oh, I've got snare top bottom. Okay, so actually the one on the right is the bottom, I think, yeah. And then this is the top, yeah. So there's not really any gating on there. You can hear the hats, you know. Let's bring the kick in. Let's just hear the kick by itself. Oh, I've used my enhanced EQ here. This is the Native Instruments Soft Tube Pultec clone, which I quite like to use for kick drums. And again, this is probably very stupid, but I do a very aggressive boost and a cut at around 30 hertz, and it just sounded really nice on my speakers. It's probably a stupid thing to do, but I don't care. You know, because for this, it's a fast track. You don't really need a pounding. I didn't want a pounding kick drum. I just wanted the kick drum to just be percussive. So yeah, in fact, the thing is, I probably should have put that in the print, but I probably forgot. I mean, most of these tracks shouldn't have anything on them. Yeah, so the snares don't have anything on them. So it's an all right drum mix. And then let's just hear the overhead. Right at the breakdown. Let's go to him. So yeah, the overhead probably had a very, very large high pass on there to make room for the kick drum. It's all about the high passing. It's fine. So this is the vocoder. I can't remember where I got the sample from. I found it on my hard drive. And then I just vocoded it with a very, very thick sawtooth, using the chords from the guitar, which I converted to MIDI and then corrected them to make sure that they fit, and then vocoded the two together and resampled that, and then just made it like really loud. I mean, look how thick and loud that is. Okay, and oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, so, oh no, hang on a minute. I was just looking at the wrong thing. That's the vocoder there. Okay. Peace will flow into you as sunshine flows into trees. The winds will blow their own freshness into you, and storms. Let's have a look at it on the mixer. So yeah, you can see there that it's the loudest part of the audio is pretty much where the fader is at minus 21 dB. I really liked this. I'm probably going to try and do it again. I think it's done things to my mixes that I'm happy with. For a long time, I was mixing in headphones. A couple of years ago, I decided that it was time to buy serious monitors. I did have like budget monitors for a long time, but they were just awful, so I just used to use headphones. Now I have very nice monitors, and I really started to notice the difference when I was mixing. I was like, oh my God, I am mixing so loud in headphones, I have to turn everything down. So yeah, what else can we have a listen to? Let's have a listen to the harmonics. So this is kind of the lead part, the theme, the melodic theme. And it's absolutely drenched in dub delay and reverb. There's so much like reverb and echo on it that it almost kind of just creates like a chiming kind of drone over the whole thing. That is me on the guitar playing harmonics, like, you know, not artificial ones, but, you know, when you hover over a fret and do a harmonic. And then I think I played it twice to double track, and then yeah, just compressed it really heavily so that there was a really nice pluck, a really nice little bit of attack on the initial pluck of the string, but also very squashed so that the notes would kind of ring out. Yeah, and so also like as you compress it, as the notes die out, then the echo and reverb kind of fades in and just sort of makes everything nice and flat. I just kind of quite like textures to be really nice and flat, like a cloud, like a foggy cloud. Drums and things, I want them to be a little bit more transient and more percussive. But things like bass and, sub bass, certain bit textured bass and effects, I just want them to be like a big cloud in my ears. Okay. So yeah, now's a good time to look at the bass. So the bass is actually two basses. The dirty bass, or the kind of mid-range bass, and the sub bass. So this is not unusual. This is, probably something that's come about, I think, quite a lot with the rise of DAWs, where you can very easily do things multiple times. And it's something that I say to people quite a lot, and it's something that people have also said to me as well. So I think it's a pretty common approach, which is when you want to do, particularly in dance music, I think they do it in rock music as well, is that you have two basses. You have your sub bass, and then you have your kind of textured bass, your trebly mid-range bass. This is very, very easy to do with a synthesizer, because you can just take a copy of the MIDI and just use a straight up sine wave, which I believe is what I did here. So the sub bass is effectively just a perfect sine wave. There's no processing on it. Oh, maybe there's a little bit. Doesn't look like a sine wave. Yeah. Well, let's listen to it. I think there's a tiny little bit of saturation on it, ever so slightly. Lots of attack, obviously. Okay, so let's now have a listen to the dirty mid-range bass. So you can hear that there's no bass at all. It's just the growly bit. Let's go to a more exciting part where it picks up a little bit. So I'm pretty sure that that's basically a couple of sawtooths. One of them's down-tuned. Maybe there's some chorus on there. And I think it's either a phaser, like a phase 90 type sound, or it's a notch filter to give it that kind of gnarliness. And then a load of reverb with quite a considerable amount of like high passing on the reverb, so that there's no mud in the reverb signal. And yeah, again, it just gives it that sort of nice cloudy bass type sound. A little bit of portamento, I think, as the notes change. Loads of overdrive, I think. So if we hear it with the sub. Okay, so we have finally the effects. It's very sparse use of effects here. Again, recorded to a print. And I believe that I actually did them in the project as a print, rather than having like loads of delays and reverbs on sends and sending the snare to the sends with automation. I instead just took samples of the snares and then ran them through a load of reverbs and delays, sampled that, and then placed the samples where I wanted them to go, and then printed that. So we've got like stuff like this. So that's a kick. That's actually a kick, I think. That's a kick. That's a reverse kick through some reverb. That's a snare, and then the kick comes in. Oh, it's a kick and a cymbal, I think. Yeah, it's like dub reggae, innit? Yeah, I love that shit. Oh, I think I used a little bit of the guitar as well. That was fun. I don't remember any of this. Yeah, so I mean, this could have actually been like loads of stuff all splattered about, but then I probably grouped them and then recorded that and basically made a decision like, okay, all of these like little bits of dub echoes and cymbal crashes and all that sort of stuff, I'm going to print them to a single track and just call it effects, you know. So that's like a good decision to do. If you're one of these people who, when they're working in their arrange page and you've got like lots of stuff everywhere and they're all just kind of doing little things, you might want to group them and then print the group. And then it's just like one layer. Yeah. So those little things basically provide you know, a little bit of dynamics and more texture. Otherwise, there isn't really a huge amount of texture on this stuff. It's all, to me, it's all kind of quite a dry sounding song. Only there's only a few things. So like the effects and the dirty bass, and I suppose the harmonics do provide like a lot of space. But the drums, there's no reverb on the drums or anything. It's just the room. They're really dry. I mean, obviously I've like done some EQ and a bit of compression, but there's no distortion, there's no reverb or anything like that. At the end, you can hear the metronome in the drums. That's the metronome in my headphones. So let's talk about the mix then. So as I was saying earlier on, I printed them so that they were all peaking at 0 dB. Now, when I import them back in, that means that every single track is going to be slamming at 0 dB. We don't want that, and I'm not going to show you that because that will blow up the entire universe. But what it does mean is that when I pull everything down, to say -24 or -30, I can then start to think about how I'm going to do a mix. And I would generally think, when it comes to mixing, I maybe kind of quite like to do it a bit old school, because I sort of started, I don't want to say old school, but like when I first started, I had a Korg D8 multi-track recorder, and you could have 8 tracks, and they were stereo tracks. You could record stereo digitally onto each track. And then I would literally use the faders to just set my mix. And then I would bounce that to mini disc. And I've always kind of quite liked that. So I always sort of try and get everything down to as few tracks as possible. You know, if I had a 24 track or 64 track console in a big studio, that might be a different story, but I would still probably want to get everything down to as few tracks as possible. So once I'd imported them all, I pulled all the levels down and then just started to bring things in. So I would start with maybe the sub, and then I'd bring in the kick, and then I would bring in, you know, everything else along with it. So probably the loudest things are the kick, the snare, and the sub bass. Let's go back to a good point in the song where it's all happening. So I'll maybe just do like a loop. I'll do a loop here. So you can see, oh, this kick drum, that is, everything I've just said is wrong. This kick drum is much, much louder than, oh, that's because I use this EQ here. So these harmonics are, everything's kind of residing at around minus 18, minus 24 to minus 18 dB. So apart from this group, but you can see that it's peaking at around minus 9. So why did I do that? Well, the reason why I did that was because I wanted to leave plenty of headroom for the mastering engineer, and I did not want to mess about with the master. The master has nothing on it at all, absolutely nothing. And the fader is dead on 0. And if I wanted to make any adjustments to the master, if it was too loud, then what I would do is I would select all of the tracks and then pull down all of the faders in relation to each other rather than going through one by one. Because I did that because I did not want to go anywhere near that master. And I wanted to basically use this VU meter, this meter here, to basically tell me how loud my mix was. And I thought I want to be somewhere around minus 12 to minus 6, maybe minus 3, thus leaving enough headroom for the mastering engineer. I'm basically guessing. I don't think anyone's ever really told me that. No, maybe. I think one guy did tell me once, like maybe minus 3. Peak around minus 3, that's plenty, but don't slam it to 0. Because if you slam it to 0, you're giving the mastering engineer nothing to work with, and he's going to send it back and he's going to go, shame on you. Shame on you. You didn't give me enough headroom. I told you you need to give me more headroom. And then you'll have a terrible relationship, and he'll make your music sound like this. And that's not what you want. So leave a lot of headroom. Aim for about, I don't know why I'm using my voice here as a reference, but aim for around minus 6. Let's see what the mix is doing. Minus 6. There we go. Minus 4, actually. So I think we've got a pretty healthy mix there. Nothing's too loud. And there could have been a little bit of room there for maybe some more dynamic processing, but I did all the dynamic processing in the prints. And so that I could be certain that when I pull a fader up, that I'm getting all the dynamics that are there in the track. I'm just making that track louder. Not like turning it up and then affecting how a compressor works. This was something that I also realized from an album I made some time ago, where I was mixing like kind of into the effects sometimes. And that was a terrible, terrible thing to do. So yeah, again, I kind of wanted to just kind of recreate an old way that I used to do it, which was that I would get everything sounding nice, like in the headphones or on the speakers, and then I would record that. I would get it nice and loud, and then I would record it, and then I would turn it down. And I'm happy with it, and I'm gonna maybe do it again for if I ever work on tracks that are in this type of format again. If I'm playing all the instruments or something, that's something I'm definitely going to think about. Get some nice EQ, nice high pass. Like it's all about the high passing. High pass as much as you can. Get some nice compression and just record it like you're recording through an old analog console. This is kind of a bit of an indulgent record for me. I wasn't too concerned of like trying to do anything flashy with electronica. I was thinking, I just want to make a nice sounding like bedroom rock album. and I'm happy with it. So. But yeah, these are just my things that I wanted to do. Some of these things are not going to work for whatever you're doing, but there are some things in there to think about, particularly with the mixing, I think. So I hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, then please leave a comment. Maybe you'd like me to do another track from the album that I could talk about. Or if you hated it, then you can say that as well. And then I'll never do a video like this ever again. If you would like to hear the album, I'll post a link. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you next time. Don't forget to check out my Patreon as well. Thanks. Bye-bye.